Welcome back to the Lou Perez Podcast. My name is Lou Perez, and I'm happy to report that right now you can order my book. That's right, I wrote a book. It's called That Joke Isn't Funny Anymore, on the death and rebirth of comedy. Follow the link in the description or head over to Amazon and search for Lou Perez, That Joke Isn't Funny Anymore. If you want other options on how you can buy my book, please sign up for my newsletter at thelouperez.com. You could also join my community at thelouperez.locals.com. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the podcast. And if you could leave a 5-star review, that would be amazing. Whether you're a long-time listener or a first-time, 5-star reviews are lovely. If you're looking for other ways you can support me, you could do so by supporting my sponsors. If you're into CBD products, please check out palomaverdecbd.com. Use promo code LOU to get 25% off purchases over $75. And if you like cold brew, check out Black Organic Cold Brew at www.blvckbrew.com and use promo code LOU for free shipping. All right, let's go. I'm very fortunate to be joined by Katie Herzog. You might know Katie from her amazing podcast, Blocked and Reported, or maybe you follow her on Twitter. And that's how I first found her. And I think she's awesome. And Katie, thank you so much for taking the time.
Glad to see you, Lou. Can I reveal a dirty secret of yours that I just learned on this podcast?
Yeah.
You have a Yahoo email address.
I do. I think
you're the last one. You and maybe my grandparents, and they're dead, so it's just you.
I feel like, and I think the last person with a Hotmail just passed away.
You're very retro.
I am. Well, I'm a creature. I think I'm a creature of habit. Like I've had the same cell phone number since high school.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
And I wonder. It's sort of like I guess I'm really easy to get in touch with. So if anybody didn't like me, they could easily just find me.
Yeah.
Is it a similar thing? With you?
Very few people make the attempt, so I don't know.
Well, that's good. That's something to be thankful for. First, I want to talk about Blocked and Reported because you're a co-host with Jesse Single, and I know. You gotta get rid of that guy. You gotta go solo. You got to be the George Michael to whatever this Wham bullshit is. But I remember. How did you guys first meet? Did you guys like connect via Twitter? Was that like what brought you guys together?
Yeah, we connected first via either Twitter, email. I had read Jesse's reporting. He was at the time he was a staff writer at New York Magazine, and I was a staff writer at The Stranger. And I read his reporting on some issues in gender medicine. And his reporting was very good. And it was also very different from sort of what you would normally read. Jesse, he took a much more, I think, scientific and evidence-based approach in his reporting than a lot of the mainstream coverage at the time and since then. And then I was working on a piece on detransitioners, so people who transition from one gender to another and then change their mind and transition back. And so I reached out to Jesse because I wanted to interview him for the piece, and he said no. He rejected me because he was working on a piece of his own, which would come out a year later. So that's how we first met each other, and then became friends online. Yeah, he's my internet buddy, basically.
Yeah, well,
and now business partner.
Yeah, well, one thing I have to say is I'm very happy that you two met. For one, your program is great, but also when it comes to Jesse and Jesse, I consider a friend. We've hung out, we've had dinner. He owes me money for Mexican food from like a year ago.
Yeah, you need to Venmo him, hit him up on Venmo for that.
Yeah, I have to. Yeah, I might have to do more than that because that $20 has just accrued so much interest.
Send some thugs to his house.
Yeah,
I'll give you his address.
Thank you. But what I've found with Jesse is I don't think there's any other person out there, at least that I know, who has people spreading outright lies about them every single day, on social media, going out to the world. And I'm really happy that he has, like a partner like yourself who's willing to, stick up for him, or at least just to ask a basic question, which is, show me your receipts.
Right.
Here you have all these people talking shit about him. Same. Yeah, accusing him of just some heinous activity. And it's just like, well, show your receipts. What do you got?
Yeah, Jesse, it's weird that people make up so much shit about him when you could just judge his appearance, his voice. He has so many actual flaws that the fact that people are constantly making up lies about him, just look at him. That's all you need to do.
It's ad hominem. Just go right to him. He's like 6'4".
Yeah. He's 6'4" and bad at basketball. He says he's good at basketball, but I can't believe it.
Yeah. Yeah. But you know, what is it though about, I mean, it must be, I guess the specific topic that you guys came together on. I mean, that just seems to bring out, you know, kind of the worst in a lot of people.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. Oftentimes, you know, Jesse and I, to a lesser extent, we get attacked by people who you would think maybe would be focusing their energy on like legislators and right-wing states who are doing things like trying to ban puberty blockers for adolescent children, or, you know, underage adolescents and children, or, you know, people with actual power. And instead they oftentimes go after Jesse and I. And I think part of that is because Jesse and I are both of the left. We're both liberals, sort of boring liberals. And there's something about when people on your own side are diverging from the commonly accepted narrative that I think is more threatening than when people on the opposite political side are doing it. And so both of us, Jesse more so than me, get a lot of vitriol from people who we probably agree with on 90% of policy positions. But these narrow disagreements can get extremely heated, and the attacks can get extremely personal.
Mm-hmm. And it must make for strange bedfellows, like, you know, suddenly it's like, you know, you're a person, you're a liberal, and now suddenly you're kind of being courted by like, here's the conservatives that are, you know, coming and following me and all that. Now, for me, I just think that's okay. That's normal. I guess you build coalition building or something like, oh, we agree on this, so maybe we could work together. Or, you know, if someone's a big free speech advocate, I don't personally give a shit if they're a Marxist or a communist. It's like, if we could work on that, great. But I guess nowadays that kind of thing is something to be frightened about, or at least some people are.
Yeah, certainly we have, I think my experience at least is that a lot of libertarians and more social conservatives follow me than I think, and read my work and listen to the show than I ever would have expected, because I've always been just sort of a boring liberal, and I, you know, lived in liberal cities, or sort of stuck in my own echo chamber, which has been a really interesting experience and has really taught me quite a bit, including the fact that, you know, conservatives are not all evil or stupid, which is something that I genuinely deeply believed for most of my life. And that, you know, this isn't particularly new in the sense that, like, in the 1970s and 80s, radical feminists were teaming up with conservatives to try to ban pornography and things like this. So there is this. So people, yes, can disagree on broader issues and come together across political lines. I'm not an activist myself, so I just try to sort of follow where the data goes. And I try to ignore tribal alliances because I think that that makes for more accurate reporting.
Yeah. Well, I think you definitely helped out the sticker game, or the sticker industry, because I guess in your hometown, people were putting up stickers like, I don't know what the hell they were calling it, like, well, I guess what, turf and stuff, like sticking all over your town.
Yeah, in Seattle, there's a bunch of stickers calling me transphobic. One calls me a Jordan Peterson apologist, so that's especially embarrassing. There's a picture of my face that calls me a Nazi sympathizer, and they used a good picture, so thank you for that. Yeah, and I think the irony of that is that if people actually want to know what I believe, I do believe in trans rights. I have more skepticism of things like puberty blockers and adolescent transition than maybe a lot of my political allies. But when it comes to law, you know, I don't think that anybody should be discriminated against for their gender identity. I don't misgender people. I literally do have trans friends. And I'm gay. I'm, you know, in the LGBTQ community, which doesn't really exist. But my identity did not protect me in Seattle.
Yeah. When it comes to the community, I was always questioning that, like, because I know that there's like there are gay bars and there are lesbian bars, and I know gay bars, that's where straight women go to ruin gay bars. Do you guys
parties?
Do you guys have that, like just straight dudes showing up at the lesbian bars?
They just want to talk about football. There's so few lesbian bars left. I think there's something like a dozen actual lesbian bars left in the country. And part of that is, I think that because of the normalization of homosexuality, people don't need these segregated spaces as much anymore. You can meet people on apps, you can go to regular bars. But part of it is also the fact that lesbian as a term has kind of gone out of style, and more people have adopted the label queer. I've written about the fact that the non-binary and trans man population seems to be, we don't have great data on this, but seems to be spiking, at least from my anecdotal experience, from observing many people in my own communities and people I know and have been friends with have transitioned within the last 10 years or so. So there are fewer lesbians, I think, going around as people, it's old fashioned to be a lesbian, it's hip to be queer. It's not cool to be a dyke.
I mean, being a lesbian is kind of like having a Yahoo email. So
good point.
You're going to hold on to that. Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah, but when it comes, I remember, you're writing, talking a lot about, women having like top surgery. Is there like I don't know, an anti-breast kind of thing? Like what's that about?
It's, this is all, I'm speculating here because I personally have not had top surgery and I don't plan on it unless I have cancer. I have thought that it would be very ironic if I got diagnosed with cancer and had to have a double mastectomy and had this male looking chest that I have complained about so many people adopting. I think that what's happening is a trend. I think that there is a social contagion when it comes to lots of human behavior, and there's nothing inherently wrong with that. We can see it in fashion. We can see it in the dog breeds that people use and the names that they give their children and the foods that we eat. Humans we're a social animal. And we mimic the people around us. And there are lots of positives to that. But I also think that in this particular case, I think that what we're seeing is a very wide social contagion. And of course, people don't like it when I say that. But just from my own experience, I don't have a spreadsheet. I should probably keep one. But the number of, and the language gets complicated here, I'll say female instead of women. The number of natal females I know who once identified as lesbians or dykes, or especially butches, who have transitioned in the last 10 years is just really incredibly high. It's probably a third to a half of the lesbians that I know. And that's not, there's nothing in the water that should make that happen. And I just think if you look at the rates of trans identities over time, it's really unlikely that all of this is coming from some deep dysphoria that people discover in their 30s or 40s. Yeah.
And it just seems like it took so long for gay people and lesbians or to be accepted culturally, and there's still an argument about whether or not, I mean, you guys fully accepted, but it just seems like we haven't had that long enough where it's like my daughter's gay and we're fine with that, or my son's gay, we're fine with it. It's sort of like that came and went, and now we're on to this new thing.
Well, I think there's a lot of cultural cachet with, for instance, in liberal communities, being the parent of a trans child. And I'm not saying that, I'm sure this happens, but I think it's probably rare. Parents sort of pushing their children in that direction. That does happen in like deeply homophobic places, like in Iran. It's illegal to be gay, but you can get gender reassignment surgery, I think paid for by the state in some cases. So I think that's part of it. There's this idea that, I think that part of it is that within some people, there probably is some internalized homophobia. It's better to be or misogyny even, it's better to be a man than it is to be sort of a butch woman. I think that's part of it. I think some people are transitioning because of trauma. I think really a bigger part is just that people are doing it and then more people do it and then more people do it after that. And, that's just kind of how things work.
Yeah. I think, and when it comes to adults making decisions, I just always hope that whatever transition they're going through, I hope that it just makes them happy and that they're able to live, happy lives full of love and all that. But something that I saw the other day, I think it was like a TikTok video, and it was a trans man, I guess, natal female, who transitioned, and he had top surgery, so no breasts, but he was pregnant, and he was like 3 or 4 months pregnant, and my wife just gave birth to our second son. He's 3 months old, so she's breastfeeding. It's like, breasts are pretty important when it comes to rearing your children and taking care of that. It seems, for me, that's almost that was more odd than like, oh, bro has a beard and a mustache. It's like,
yeah, I mean, there's something I think right now at the point that we're in society that is disconcerting for a lot of people to see what looks like a pregnant man. It's weird. We don't expect that to happen. I don't really want to comment on the internal motivations of somebody to cut off their breast, but I can understand why it strikes some people as, well, this is weird, because it is weird. It's totally new within our society. And people say like repeat platitudes about like how trans people have always existed. And I think that's true. But it's not true that, for like there were, you would turn on TikTok and see a pregnant man. That's all very new. And of course there's going to be some discomfort with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you see like any of this like kind of turning around? Do you think is there going to be like kind of a Jurassic Park of lesbians where I mean, I think that I think this is cyclical, and I think that unfortunately what we're seeing right now is the progress that has been made in terms of LGBTQ rights. There's also a backlash that I think we're seeing right at this moment in various different states, bills to limit people's rights, and it's complicated. So you sort of have to look at the individual state and the individual law to comment on whether or not they're good or bad. But I do think we're seeing backlash, even support. If you look at polling support for LGBTQ rights and LGBTQ people has gone down in recent years. Oh, really?
I think part of that is because there is this extremist element that you mostly see online. And I think you mostly see it within the trans community of redefining language, trying to, if not criminalize, at least socially sanctioning people for using terms like male and female. I think there's a lot of biological denialism. You see people, there's these sort of platitudes, people will chant things like trans women are women, and try to shut people down who disagree with that stance. The non-binary thing is, of course, very huge. And so I think that what we're seeing now is a really unfortunate backlash that has come from sort of the extremist wing of these activist groups pushing for things that everybody is not down with.
Yeah. What was it recently? I guess one of the guys from the Daily Wire was on Dr. Phil. Did you say Matt? I forget.
Matt Walsh. Yeah.
Matt Walsh. And I guess it was Matt Walsh debating a non-binary person or a trans. I forget how they identified. But that was the first time that I saw something like that, I guess, on a morning TV show.
It was a pretty remarkable clip. So Matt Walsh, who's of course very conservative, is sort of repeating the line that radical feminists and gender critical feminists have said for years, which is basically like, what is a woman? Yeah. And these non-binary activists who are trans non-binary, seems like a contradiction, but a lot of people identify that way, basically say we can't identify women. We can't, like, it's all like a woman is in the eye of the beholder. It was a really striking clip. I think Matt sort of intellectually got the better of them, even though the audience seemed to be against him. Yeah,
and I don't think they did themselves any favors afterwards, saying that they felt like I forget how they was that they felt unsafe, or they felt because obviously if like all the civil rights movements, you're going to have to be able to debate your case in public to get the public on your side. And I mean, anybody watching that clip, obviously they can see that Matt Walsh is pointed and he was critical and all that, but to say that his arguments were somehow making them unsafe, it's just like, no, that's not what was going on there.
There's a lot of redefining of terms that used to have a particular meaning lately.
I'm sure you and Jesse have been talking a lot about, misinformation online, and especially when it comes to censorship. What have you been your take on like Neil Young and Joe Rogan and Spotify? And then I hear today Barry Manilow might be getting into the mix.
Really, really. This is a great way. If your career is dying, this is a great way to get back in the headlines. Yeah, I think, I think the whole thing has been very interesting to watch. I support Neil Young's absolute right to protest in this way. Mike Pesca pointed this out on his podcast. So Neil Young has some fringe beliefs of his own. Like he's one of these like anti-GMO guys who thinks that GMOs cause diseases that they absolutely don't cause. He sung a song saying that pesticides cause autism. So applying the Neil Young rule, Neil Young should also not be on this platform. So that said, I think it's fine if he wants to protest. And I think it's also fine for Spotify to choose Joe Rogan in this case, which of course they're going to do because they spent $120 million apparently to exclusively acquire his content. And this idea that, Joe Rogan is a comic. He is constantly telling people that he's a dumbass and not to listen to him. And he also is absolutely willing to change his mind and to be corrected when faced with the evidence. And I think a lot of people who try to get him censored and try to get him canceled haven't listened to his show. They've seen clips, sometimes clips that are taken out of context. And this isn't to say that the guy is always right. He's oftentimes wrong. And he has guests on the shows that I hear sometimes. And I'm like, this is wrong. And I don't think people should be getting their health information from Joe Rogan. But I also don't think that it's weird to see these, heroes of the 1960s and 70s trying to get a comic canceled.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think anyone is coming out looking particularly good in this battle.
Yeah. And one thing that annoys me, and this happens every single time, if, say a famous person says something that, you don't like, you have a bunch of people who come and say, who's that? Never heard of them. And it's like, look, Neil Young is a fucking amazing songwriter and an amazing singer. From his stuff with, his solo stuff, his stuff with Crazy Horse, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young and all that. The man is a legend. And just because he, has taken this stance against Joe Rogan and Spotify doesn't negate the fact that he's awesome. In the same way, it's like Dave Chappelle is one of the greatest comedians to ever live. Just because you don't like the way that he treated trans issues in his specials doesn't take away from that. Or if you don't like Louis C.K., Louis C.K.'s kink, or, how he handled that situation. Well, the guy has been funny. It's, and I don't know, it just seems like a go-to where there's absolutely no nuance whatsoever. It's like, yeah, this person could be fantastic.
Well, and if your main concern is misinformation, Neil Young needs to get all of his content taken off of YouTube, off of Facebook, off of Twitter. There's no platform. There's no online platform that isn't going to have misinformation because humans make information. I mean, not even online. CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, your local news network, NPR. Misinformation is everywhere because people are human and humans get shit wrong. And so Neil Young taking this stand, I mean, I hate to be too cynical about it, but it does strike me as a little bit opportunistic on his part. I mean, nobody has talked about Neil Young this much since his failure of a music streaming thing, Pono or whatever it was called.
Oh, did he have that? I didn't know.
Exactly. Nobody has talked about Neil Young this much in years.
He was what Jay-Z had Tidal, and then
he had it was a music streamer, like a player, an actual physical player. That was supposed to be very high quality, and it failed.
And it turns out he doesn't even own his catalog of music. So he wasn't even able. It's not even his. He doesn't even have the right to pull it off of Spotify.
So he's presumably not getting royalties, I assume, if he doesn't own the catalog.
I
don't know how that works.
Yeah, I think he's able to play live or something like that.
Okay,
and
he needs a better agent if he doesn't own his own catalog.
Or maybe he sold it for
true.
Because I think Springsteen just sold his catalog for $500 million.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure he's doing fine.
Yeah, well, I had I had a joke about Springsteen's right now writing a song about this guy who had to sell his catalog for $500 million in order just to make ends meet, just to be able to live and
to move out of Jersey.
Yeah, to find maybe this is the time he and Maria could finally finally get out of it. When it comes to it's been tough to keep up with Joe Rogan, as a listener, just because I mean the guy, what's he put out, like 3-4 hour conversations a week, so
a day, yeah.
So I mean he's pumping out so much material, but I know as someone who's listened to his stuff, when it came to COVID, I wasn't listening to Joe. I was listening actually to like mainstream pundits and all that, like
who are constantly changing their mind because the data that we have is constantly changing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, even the WHO, like, or the CDC, don't wear masks, wear a mask, wear cloth mask, wear N95. Like, it's constantly changing.
Yeah.
And that's part of the nature of the world that we're in. And the fact that we're getting more and more data all the time. But this idea that you should just shut that fucking comic down.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Maybe it's the conspiratorial part of me thinks like, oh, if we focus on Joe Rogan and those, few episodes or clips, then we actually don't have to hold the people accountable who need to be held accountable.
Right.
Because I mean, I was one of those people. I was so looking forward to the vaccine rollout.
Mm-hmm.
I was, because I have a baby at the time, and my parents are elderly, and I was like, you're telling me if I get this, I don't have to worry about harming my family. Awesome. Sign me up. And I was pissed off because it was a slow rollout. And I remember at one time you were able to, I guess, like jump the line, or if you were a smoker or obese. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, what the fuck, man? Yeah. Like here I am. I've been running, during this pandemic, and you're telling me I
shouldn't have done that. You shouldn't have done that. Should have been sitting there smoking butts.
I should just smoke, just started packing it in. What was what's it been like for you? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember you posting stuff about, do you live near like a nursing home or something like that? Like
I do live beside one of my neighbors is I guess it is a nursing home. It's a facility for old people. I guess it's a nursing home, but it's like it looks like it's a house. Mm-hmm. And I would like sit in my backyard and I would see people come and like talk to their loved ones through the windows. Yeah. And of course they're shouting because grandpa can't hear them, and having these horrible, uncomfortable, awkward conversations with these people who are elderly. Some of them probably have dementia. So I would sit in my backyard and watch that. That was my entertainment during the first few months of COVID. I mean, my life has both changed a lot in the sense that I got laid off from my staff job at The Stranger where I worked, and started this podcast. So in that sense, I've had like lots of changes, and my wife is a nurse. So in the beginning it was very scary. But in some sense it really hasn't changed. I don't live in a city. I live in a small town, I guess. Mm-hmm. And, I spent a lot of time outside in the woods. So that sort of, I wasn't like going out to shows anyway. It's not really my thing. COVID has been, as far as COVID goes, I've been extremely lucky.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it sounds like you've been able to adapt to it nicely. Do you have any set plans to get back into journalism proper, or what are you thinking?
Not really. I have a piece coming out in a couple weeks, but I've written probably since COVID started. I've maybe written 10 pieces for various different outlets over the course of, almost 2 years now. And that would have been like 3 days output when I had a staff job at The Stranger. I mean, that would have been short pieces. Mm-hmm. So I'm able to really take my time and be very selective about what I want to work on right now. And it turns out I don't want to work very hard or very often. And the podcast is sustaining me. So I don't have to dive back into full-time writing.
Yeah. Where do you see, sort of like, future of journalism? Do you think that that's kind of where it's going? Because look, I remember reading your piece in The Stranger about Jordan Peterson, and the shit that you got for that, just for going to this guy's, talk and just saying what you saw.
Mhm.
The fact that you didn't say, oh yeah, he's definitely going to do like a beer hall push, and he's, people got on your case. It's almost like, who wants to deal with that shit?
Yeah, and Substack has been really good for some independent creators. At the same time that there's been this hollowing out of institutions, so I think that is right now the direction of things going. The Reporter becoming a sort of an independent brand, for lack of a better term, which will work out really well for some people if you have a big following, and for some people it will be a total disaster. And I think there's some real problems with that, even though it's been good for me personally, because for one thing, I think free content is great. Unfortunately, free content is not sustainable because the advertising has also really dropped off. So that creates, tier systems within who can consume media and who can't. So we can bitch and moan about misinformation all we want, but if you're putting like great reporting behind a paywall,
right,
who's going to be able to get that? So I think that's a problem. There's been this real hollowing out of local media, which I think is a huge, huge problem. This started well before COVID. This has to do with conglomerates essentially buying up small papers and turning them into shells of their former selves or shutting them down entirely. That's a huge problem because, there's lots of small towns in America where nobody's covering the school board or the police or the city council. And so what I would love to see is a resurgence of a focus on local media, but the money isn't there. The money is in, hot takes and think pieces and Glenn Greenwald and Barry Weiss and people like that. And I don't begrudge them that. I hope to be with them on the top of the Substack leaderboards. But I think in terms of how this movement is affecting the populace, I don't think it's great.
Yeah. In our, we also live in a small town, and we get like the local newspaper that somehow finds its way to our door. I've never subscribed to this. I have no idea. Yeah.
Maybe the previous owner maybe subscribed and just never updated their address or something.
Maybe, but when we get it, I'm looking through it. I'm like, how is this being done? Like, who's going? And then I see there's like one steakhouse in town, and right in the middle of the paper, there's like a full page ad for the steakhouse. And I wonder, I'm like, is this how they're doing it? Like, is this sort of like a Randolph Hearst sort of thing?
Maybe the steakhouse. The steakhouse owns the paper.
Yeah, because there haven't been any complaints in the paper about the steakhouse.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that's coming. We also have this weird thing that happened because we've gotten like a bunch of snow, and somebody salted our driveway. And it wasn't. It's a different kind of salt. We started. This is going to bore the shit out of everybody. The first kind of salt we used was, kind of like a rock salt. Yeah. And then that just kind of stayed forever. And then I switched to a calcium salt that really disappears. And then somebody's throwing like this blue salt, almost like Breaking Bad meth.
Weird.
Amphetamine. Yeah.
You need to put some security cameras outside your house so you can get down to the bottom of this whoever's doing this.
I know we got to do. We've renovated this whole house, but the one thing that we've lacked is security. Like anybody.
Was this a COVID move or a kid move?
Yeah. It was a little bit of both. We were in Brooklyn in a 1-bedroom apartment, and our plans were to move to another apartment in the building, fix that up. It's a co-op. The co-op said that they'd be down with the renovation. And then 6 months later, they said no. So then we had to try to sell not one, but 2 apartments.
Oh my God.
During a pandemic with a baby. And then me getting laid off. So that was,
nice.
Yeah. So I put all of them together. I try to get all my problems at the same time. Fortunately.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. If I develop a drinking habit,
now would be the time.
Yeah. It'll just.
I recommend it.
There's a great sketch for Kids in the Hall where a guy, he becomes an alcoholic, but it's all for like girly drinks. So it's all. So he spends his time like, he pulls out the vodka and then like the grenadine, and then he has to get the little umbrella and puts a rim of pineapple sugar on it.
Yeah,
that's the route that
that's your future.
Yeah, that's the future. What's exciting you nowadays when it comes to this stuff? I mean, you guys basically, you guys talk about so much that's happening like online and in the culture. So
what is exciting me? I'm excited that Mike Pesca's podcast is back. He was laid off or fired or suspended, indefinitely suspended from Slate's The Gist, the podcast that he created like a year ago, after he did not say the N-word or say the N-word. He didn't. Talking about this is so difficult because we can't say the words, but he was involved in a conversation on the Slate Slack about after the firing of this guy, Donald McNeil, who was a New York Times reporter who was essentially fired for saying the N-word in a sort of appropriate context, mentioning it. He didn't call somebody the word. And Mike who was very successful, got indefinitely suspended and almost really lost his show because he argued that this New York Times reporter, who was their best COVID reporter, shouldn't have been fired. And then he was fired, or not fired, but definitely suspended. And his podcast, after a year hiatus, he took control of it, and now it's back. So I'm excited about that. And I'm excited about some good TV. I've been watching Yellowstone and Righteous Gemstones. So that's what I'm into.
What is Yellowstone?
Okay, so Yellowstone, I think this is maybe the most popular television show, but it's one of those things where everybody who is talking about Succession on Twitter and like works in New York media has never heard of this show, which is on the Paramount Network, which I had also never heard of. But it's a very similar. It's a show about ranching, and it stars Kevin Costner, and it's set in Montana, and it's this beautiful landscapes. But it's very similar to Succession and Righteous Gemstones in the sense that it's basically about a patriarch, an aging patriarch, and what's going to happen to the family business after he dies. And so there's these interests. So apparently something like 1.5 million people watch Succession every week, and then tens of millions of people would watch this show Yellowstone that critics hadn't even heard of because it's sort of a red state show, but it's quite good.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I'm as a creative, who's trying to, develop shows and that sort of thing. It's not that I have a fear of kind of this online bullshit, infecting it, but ultimately it's like I don't hear about a show unless it's caused like some controversy. And it seems like the only time I hear about anything, it's there isn't enough of people saying you got to watch this because it's great. It's always you got to watch this because it's cringy.
Yeah. Well, I also recommend Righteous Gemstones, which also falls into that category and stars John Goodman as a televangelist. Which is, I think you would like it. It's very funny. It's on HBO.
John Good. I just watched, was it Inside Llewyn Davis?
Llewyn Davis, I think. Yeah.
So I'm always like, I think like 10 years behind on movies and TV and all that. So I'll watch Yellowstone like
in 10 years.
In 10 years when I'm 50. And John Goodman has a really small role in it. He plays a jazz musician who happens to be like kind of carpooling with Oscar Isaac's character and another guy. And what this guy's able to do in just like 5 minutes of screen time is just unbelievable. Like he's such a treasure. I don't think people talk about him enough. How great
he's a fantastic actor. He really is.
Yeah. Let's see. I don't want things to bore out right now. I have you for a few more minutes and want to. Earlier we talked about you brought up like the non-binary stuff. I saw a thing was a figure skater just came out as non-binary.
This was a gay male, right?
Yeah, and I don't like it's like there's so much controversy about trans athletes being able to compete against who are the non-binaries going to compete against? I guess just each other. That's a way to win the competition. There'll be very few of them. It's like what but it's almost like if we are going to have a serious conversation about this, it's like, well, what does the non-binary mean in regard compared to the other sexes?
I mean, I think it means basically nothing. It's a way of saying that you don't conform to gender stereotypes. But of course, I mean, my problem with the non-binary thing is it's like saying, I'm not a girly girl, and so therefore I'm not a girl, which I think is very restrictive. And rather than broadening what it is to be male or female or man or woman, it really restricts it. So I think it's the opposite of progressive. but it's also very popular. Yeah, I think we're going to be seeing more and more people like, like Sam Smith, the British singer, came out as non-binary. Apparently now he's no longer eligible for various British music awards because he can't.
Oh, really?
It would be offensive to put him in the male category, and he can't be in the female category either. So I don't know how well people are thinking these things ahead. I mean, it's incredibly popular right now.
Sam Smith,
but I think, yeah, sorry.
I was just gonna say he's gonna have a Neil Young moment where he's like, okay, do I have to go against Joe Rogan now?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and then there, like, I'll see, like, Jonathan Van Ness, one of the Queer Eye guys. He came out as non-binary, or they came out as non-binary, but called himself or called themselves, I'm a non-binary man. What does that mean? That is a direct contradiction. You cannot be both a non-binary and a man. That is, the non-binariness refutes the whole position that you're a man or a woman or whatever. So I think there's a lot of contradictions, and I don't think this stuff sort of dismantles when faced with even a tiny bit of rigor. It just doesn't actually make sense.
Yeah, I haven't. My wife just watched the new season of Queer Eye. I was a fan, but after a while, I think Jonathan calls everyone gorgeous, and then I'm like, I don't know if I can trust you, Jonathan.
Yeah, everyone's not gorgeous.
Everyone is not gorgeous. For people who aren't familiar with your stuff, you have a really curly haired dog.
I do. He is in the other room right now. I would introduce him to the show.
How did that happen? Is he a rescue? Everyone's going to have to judge.
I rescued him from a very expensive breeder. No, he is a golden doodle. I will say this. My wife is allergic to dogs, which is why we have this dog, because they're the kind of breed that doesn't shed. I am also allergic to dog fur on the couch, so that's also why. So we got this, specialized dog breed for her allergies, but I also benefit from it handsomely. He's a great dog. He's my little buddy, my constant companion. His name's Moose.
Yeah, when I was living in the city, I remember I went into this bar, and this guy had not one, but two really big golden labs in the bar. And
it's a little much.
Yeah. And I think the bartender or the manager was trying to tell him, like, hey man, you can't bring those dogs in here. And he said, no, they're both service dogs. Both.
Wow. I wonder if he had like two different disabilities, and one was for one, and one was a seeing eye dog, and one was an autism dog or something.
I mean, he didn't look blind, because he looked very righteous when he said that to the guy. But it made me think. I was just like, oh my God, these poor dogs.
Yeah.
Like the idea of, if you're human, if your owner needs two service dogs, like, can your owner be expected to take care of you, let alone himself? Yeah.
Maybe the dogs take care of each other in addition to him.
I want to see that sitcom.
Yeah.
All that.
With John Goodman.
Yeah. Katie, where could people check out your stuff?
Blocked and Reported is on all podcast platforms, and it's at blockedandreported.org. I'm on Twitter at Kitty Herzog.
Thank you so much for listening. And again, please order my book, That Joke Isn't Funny Anymore, on the death and rebirth of comedy. Just follow the link in the description, or head over to Amazon and search for Lou Perez, That Joke Isn't Funny Anymore. And please subscribe to my podcast. Leave a 5-star review. Why not? Sign up for my newsletter at thelouperez.com. And if you want other ways to support my work, you can join thelouperez.locals.com. And of course, be sure to support my sponsors, palomaverdecbd.com. Use promo code Lou for 25% off purchases over $75, and Black Organic Cold Brew, BLVCKBREW.com. Use promo code Lou for free shipping. Thank you.